April 2, 1979. A night shift at a Soviet military microbiology facility. A filter is removed for maintenance. It never gets replaced. Over the course of the night, weaponized anthrax spores drift south over the city of Sverdlovsk. At least 66 people will die. The number later confirmed by a US-Russian investigation. The Soviet government will blame contaminated meat. The truth won't emerge for 13 years. So far inside the fence, we've seen nuclear weapons labs and plutonium disasters. But the Soviet closed facility system extended beyond the atom. Sverdlovsk was not a zato. It was a major industrial city, more than 1 million people, open to Soviet citizens, on the maps. But on the southern edge sat a compound that didn't appear on any map. Military Compound 19, officially a defense research facility. Actually, according to defector testimony and Western intelligence, part of Biopreparat, the Soviet Union's covert biological weapons program. And in 1979, it was working with weaponized anthrax. In 1972, the Soviet Union signed the Biological Weapons Convention. The treaty banned the development, production, and stockpiling of biological weapons. The USSR signed it. And then, according to defector Ken Alibek and declassified US intelligence, massively expanded its bioweapons program. The system was called Biopreparat. Officially, a civilian pharmaceutical network. In reality, a sprawling military-industrial complex devoted to weaponizing diseases. According to Ken Alibek, Biopreparat operated dozens of facilities employing tens of thousands of scientists. Anthrax, smallpox, plague, tularemia. Compound 19 in Sverdlovsk was one node in this network. Its specialty, aerosolized anthrax spores, refined for weapons delivery. The work was classified. The scientists lived under secrecy protocols, and the city of Sverdlovsk, right next door, had no idea what was inside the fence. Inside Compound 19, anthrax production required strict containment. The facility used exhaust filters to trap spores before air left the building. According to accounts gathered by investigators, the day shift removed one of those filters for maintenance on April 2, 1979. Standard procedure. They logged it. They passed the information to the night shift supervisor. But during the night shift, according to later accounts, the message failed to reach the production line workers. The ventilation system ran without the filter. According to later analysis, for an unknown duration, possibly several hours, weaponized anthrax spores vented directly into the night air. The wind was blowing south. The anthrax plume drifted in a narrow band over the southern districts of Sverdlovsk. People were asleep. They inhaled microscopic spores. Inhalation anthrax typically has an incubation period of 1 to 6 days. By April the 4th, patients began arriving at hospitals. Respiratory distress, high fever, shock. Doctors recognized the symptoms, anthrax, but they had no explanation for the pattern. The cases weren't scattered across the city. They formed a line, all downwind from Compound 19. And here's the part they couldn't hide. According to Messelson's investigation, the documented victims had been outdoors or in buildings with open windows on the night of April the 2nd. The KGB moved immediately. Medical records were confiscated. Doctors were ordered not to discuss the cases. Families of the dead were told not to speak to outsiders. The official explanation: an outbreak caused by contaminated meat sold on the black market. Tainted livestock from an infected farm. Soviet health authorities announced that anthrax had entered the food supply. They warned citizens to boil meat thoroughly. They blamed illegal butchers. Western intelligence agencies heard rumors of an outbreak. But the Soviets stuck to the story. contaminated meat, a regrettable public health incident, nothing to do with biological weapons. And then, the record goes quiet. For 13 years, 1992, the Soviet Union has collapsed. Boris Yeltsin is now president of the Russian Federation, and Yeltsin, who in 1979 had been the Communist Party chief in Sverdlovsk, admits the truth. It wasn't contaminated meat. It was a military accident, an accidental release from Compound 19. But even with Yeltsin's admission, questions remain. In 1992, Dr. Matthew Meselson, a Harvard molecular biologist, traveled to Sverdlovsk with a team of researchers. They gained access to surviving medical records, death certificates, and interviews with families. What they found was definitive. The victims lived and worked in a narrow corridor extending directly downwind from Compound 19. The wind pattern on the night of April 2nd matched the victim distribution exactly. Tissue samples showed inhalation anthrax, not gastrointestinal anthrax, which results from eating contaminated meat. Meselson's team published their findings in the journal Science in 1994. The contaminated meat story was a lie. Here's what we can verify: epidemiological mapping from medical records and death certificates, meteorological data from Soviet weather stations, tissue pathology consistent with inhalation anthrax, Yeltsin's 1992 admission, corroborated by defector testimony. But here's what no one was supposed to know. In 1992, Dr. Kanatjan Alibekov, deputy director of Biopreparat, defected to the United States. He took the name Ken Alibek, and in his 1999 book Biohazard, he confirmed the scale of the Soviet biological weapons program. According to Alibek, Biopreparat had employed more than 30,000 people. It had weaponized anthrax, smallpox, plague, and hemorrhagic fevers. And far from shutting down after Sverdlovsk, according to Alibek and Western intelligence assessments, the program had expanded through the 1980s. The 1972 treaty the USSR had signed violated on an industrial scale. Compound 19 wasn't an isolated lab. It was one factory in a biological arms race the world didn't know was happening. Today, Sverdlovsk is called Yekaterinburg. It's a thriving city of 1.5 million. The site of Compound 19 remains restricted. At least 66 people died in the 1979 outbreak, the number confirmed by Dr. Matthew Meselson's 1994 investigation. The actual toll may be higher. KGB confiscations mean some deaths may never have been documented. Survivors and families were denied compensation for years. After Yeltsin's admission, some received acknowledgement, but the full medical records have never been released. According to arms control researchers, the Sverdlovsk outbreak remains the deadliest documented release of a biological weapon in modern history. It exposed a fundamental problem in arms control. You can sign a treaty, but verification is nearly impossible when the work happens inside closed facilities. After the USSR collapsed, thousands of biopreparat scientists found themselves unemployed. Western governments launched programs to hire them, partly to prevent brain drain to other countries seeking bioweapons expertise. Some former Soviet bioweapons facilities were dismantled under international supervision. Others remain active as research centers. The question of what happened to all the weaponized pathogens, smallpox stockpiles, anthrax reserves, remains largely unanswered. Official Russian policy is that the bioweapons program ended. Western intelligence agencies remain cautious, citing incomplete disclosure and dual-use research concerns. What we know for certain: on April 2, 1979, a single maintenance error released a weapon designed to kill. It drifted over a city. It killed dozens. And for 13 years, The Soviet government lied about what happened. The people of Sverdlovsk had no choice, no warning, no voice. They lived next to a facility that didn't exist. And when it failed, they became evidence in a secret war. If you want the next hidden chapter of the Cold War, subscribe. Next time, an entire city built inside a mountain. Krasnoyarsk 26, where plutonium reactors ran in tunnels carved from granite, and 100,000 people lived in a place that officially didn't exist. And tell me in the comments, how do you verify a treaty when the work happens behind closed doors?